Hello, this is Eric Brandsburg, CTO of Heimdall Data. Following up on our last video, in which we configured LDAP to use as an authentication and authorization data source for Heimdall. We're going to demonstrate how we can now leverage group to role mapping within a data source in order to determine who has access to what, and then demonstrate approval chain processing. So first I'm going to log in as my administrative user. I'm going to go to the data source. I'm going to use our Postgres source for this example and come in here and we can see our group and role mapping and management tab. So what we'll find here is that we have two groups defined, the Heimdall and the admin group, and then we have them mapped to two different databases. We could actually change this if we wanted to do full-time, get access to Odoo, and admins get access as Postgres. So once we have our local roles here, we can then come down and look at the role management for Postgres and then what notification alias is used for the approval process. And if we look here, we can see that for the admin notification alias, only one approver is listed, Eric at Heimdall Data. And then for the test, it is admin at heimdalldata.com. Okay, so we can commit that change. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come back on over to my user. And again, reiterating, we can see what groups are extracted from LDAP. We can come over here to the Postgres data source. And now what we can see is this. Now the first thing is we've got this grayed out block, okay? We can see the approvers here. But if we hover over this one, it's saying you are the only approver for the mapped roles. Requests cannot be made. The reason for this is that the admin role is only approved by Eric at heimdalldata.com, which is me. Okay, but there is a different approver for this one. So I can come in and this is showing that the full-time to Odoo mapping is applied. But there's also the Odoo role. And the reason for that is that inherently I am part of the Odoo group. If we look at that, we can see under WordPress there's Odoo, and because there's a one-to-one mapping and that we're extracting that group, we're not filtering anything out. Since there's one-to-one mapping, it says, okay, you have access to Odoo. But again, it still requires the approver to work. So what I'm going to do is I 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to request this session. Okay, notification sent successfully. Great. So I can now come back on over to my other window as admin. Okay, I can come to the pending approvals, and it shows that user eBrandsburg has requested the Odoo selected role. I can now approve that. It will send the notice to the requester. We can come back over here and we can look at sessions, and we now have ephemeral credentials created. If we come in here, we can see what the password is, or we can just copy and paste it from there. So now let's take a look at what this actually means. Okay. Come to the data source tab here, Postgres. We can come down to the database browser now. Odoo, users. What we see is that we have the eBrandsburg ephemeral user is granted the Odoo role and has everything available to it that the Odoo role gives it access to. So that's just a very brief example of how you do a privilege escalation request with Heimdall. We can then go back here. Okay, as the user eBrandsburg, I now have the ability to close out my session. I can come back on over here to the management interface. We can come over here. Actually, let's look at the audit, get records, and we can see the records associated with this session. So you can see the eBrainsburg created a request here. The admin user approved the request for the role Udo. Okay, at that point the session started. It gives us the ephemeral credentials or username that was used for this purpose, and then it shows when the request was canceled for that username. And at that point, the user will no longer be available. If we come on over here, we can open that back up, look at the users, let's refresh, and we can see that the user is no longer online and available. Now, an interesting thing here is this eBrainsburg based portal user. This is an interesting side effect of how we manage things. One of the issues that we encountered when trying to use ephemeral users is what happens to objects that are created by the user while they are logged in as the ephemeral user. What that can block deleting the user as long as those objects still exist. So what we do is we take any objects that were created by the user and we actually transition them back into the base portal user, which is not a loginable user. It's actually locked out. They can't log in. But it will become the container to own any objects that the user created. This ensures that data does not get deleted and that we can deal with it later. If we log in as a new portal user, it will actually inherit that base portal user role, and then we'll have access to those objects again. So this gives you basically object access permanence, even though the users are ephemeral themselves. Hopefully this shows a nice brief example, but gives you an idea of the power and the capability that we have within our system. Thank you.